begin with, just in the spirit of reconciliation, I want to acknowledge that we are on the homeland of the many diverse First Nations and Métis people whose ancestors have walked this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to work, live, and learn on the traditional territory of Treaty 8. And then move on to adoption of the agenda.
I will move.
Any changes needed? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And then moving on to items for debate. If there was anything that we can exclude, when I'm looking through this, I would like to almost talk about everything except maybe the minutes.
I agree.
Yeah, you agree? Okay. All right. So just because we got to approve the minutes anyways, we might as well just go through and do it in order.
And, no, well, we don't need to, do we need to talk about 14?
Yes. I want to. So, okay, so moving on then, we'll go through the entire agenda. And the next part is public delegations. And Chris gave us his update informally. So nothing else? Nothing else. Okay, so moving on then to our minutes for March 8th. Can I get a motion on these?
I'll move.
All right. Any changes anybody's identified? Oh, you're safe. We've got them all signed up. All in favor? Carried. All right, moving on then to item 8.1, the flood repair. Can I get a motion on this one? Councillor Dunn?
That council direct administration proceed with investigating the potential of shifting funding required to repair the riverbank to that of a new public works facility.
All right. And I'll just throw it over perhaps with Rod to give us the rationale and thoughts on there. I know it's in the proposal. But.
Yeah, so overall, I think people are aware that in 2020 we had some significant rainfall, which caused some flooding to some of our infrastructure, and we've got the lagoon that RFP is going out here fairly soon. Vern was dealing with people actually last week, but the other piece is right next to the public workshop, and what ended up happening during that event was that a lot of the riverbank got eroded, and unfortunately it's happened just about any other place on the property, but right where it's eroded is near the corner of the public works shop. So we did put in an application at that time to get it repaired, and the application is approved in principle. So overall, once that's repaired, as long as it's built to the exact same standards, it will be approved. Having said that, for those that have been here a long, long time, I think it was the 80s or the 90s, there was a lot of remediation work done on a river through the town. And if you look along the river banks, there's a lot of rocks and that type of thing, so that there isn't that much erosion through most of the part of the town. Well, about 100 feet approximately from the public works shop, that's where that remediation work stopped. So and right after that, that's where the erosion occurred. So our public works building is fairly old. The initial piece was built in 70, the next piece in 76, and a small addition, I think, in the 90s at some point. And it's around its life. Its life is pretty close to the end. We know that within the next few years, it's going to require an HVAC system. HVAC is usually, probably in that range of about $200,000, and it's an old building. So one of the things the administration was thinking of is, rather than repairing that riverbank, because there is a lot of land in our public works shop, rather than repairing that, and if another flood occurs, might just erode another 10 feet down the river, is to see if that may be a more effective and practical and better use of taxpayer municipal affairs on that. And they had indicated from an administrative perspective that, yeah, that'd be something that they would likely support from the administration side, is rather than putting that funding to repair that bank, it actually goes into a new shop. So there's still a lot of details to be worked out as far as, well, first of all, council has to say that might be something we're interested in, but there's a lot of land on that parcel. There's a lot of space, so the shop could be rebuilt someplace else. We know that a new shop would cost significantly more than what the province would be paying, but at the same time, again, that shop is very close. It's close to the end of its life, anyways. So, administration believes that it would be prudent to actually invest that money, depending on how much the province would ultimately provide us, but to continue on a path of researching that option to allocate that funding to a shop rather than repairing that riverbank. That's it in a nutshell. So open to discussion. I guess the last thing, I guess the administration doesn't want to proceed in going through this, like through municipal affairs, if we're not serious about actually, potentially replacing the building. So it's going to have to go up to minister level. So we start the wheels unless things really, really do change from the ballpark numbers. I think it was like a fairly firm yes. It doesn't have to be 100% yes, but if there's any reservations, I'd like to hear about them now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll throw it open for questions. Councilor Wagle.
So the idea will be to, with the new shop, because I'm all in favor of this. I think this is a no-brainer really for us. You said something about it would have to be the same specifications we talked in the riverbank, or because I'm thinking that if we're going to be building a new shop, if we build a shop that is exactly the same as what we have now, that's, we should overbuild it.
So, what I meant with regards to replacing what was there would be the riverbank. So if we repair the riverbank, they repair to the standard it was before. They did indicate that they may do a few more things, but typically the grant program works replaced to what's there. So that's what I meant, but absolutely on the shop. And that's one of the risks with this, right? Because we would want to change the structure and how it's configured, and potentially even look at being able to add on so that when the gas shop needs repairing, it's easily included. So it's, you're going to get some project creep on this, I believe. I think there's a lot of ways of mitigating it, depending on what the province says. I think it would be our preference to hold off a couple of years if at all possible, so that the shop would last a little bit more without actually having to invest in the HVAC system, etc. They may be of the opinion, which typically is what the province likes, is get that money in the ground and start the economy going, right? But I think there's other ways of still mitigating it. Maybe I could just build the shell to begin with. There's a lot of details I think that have to be worked through, but I absolutely I don't want to give you the false impression that rebuild 11,600 square foot shop, because we would request that it be built a little bit bigger.
I had some notes here, Liz. Okay, you said the erosion was how far from the corner? Like 10 feet?
No, it is further. You can get vehicles through there, so
okay. So about 30 feet maybe.
Yeah. And we have what we've done is we put up a steel fence along the bank, so for a little
That'll
safety.
the river whenever your road's swing.
So.
Okay. And, well, I guess it's really preliminary in that, because demolition costs worry me a little bit on the old shop, because, like you said, it was built in the 70s and the 90s, and, asbestos was a thing. Do we know is there asbestos in that building?
I don't think we've done an asbestos study, but I'd say there's for sure some in there. The positive with the shop is that it doesn't have a lot of closed walls, that type of thing. There are a couple in there, but you're right. That's another risk as to what's in that building, right? But at some point, I think the whole thing here is that at some point we're going to have to invest in the shop, and if we can get
to get the province to pay a big chunk of it just from this river repair thing, and then perhaps there will be some other money that we can access, because we know that the provincial government likes giving out money when there's an election coming up, and that's in a year. So, I'm all in favor of replacing our shop.
Rod, how much has the ground been eroding away each year?
Not a ton. So I think the bigger concern is that the amount of erosion that occurred with the flood last go round, it was significant. There was minimal before that, but there was some. So that's one of the issues as well. How much will it erode? How long it will take to get to the shop? I think at least our estimate, it really depends if you get another couple flash floods, and then it could get really close. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Has it eroded a ton in the last couple of years? No. That eroded a ton.
Okay. And then I guess that's part of my thing is if it keeps eroding in there, how long, is that piece of land good for and accessing in? I just want to make sure that land is going to be good for the rest of it.
Yeah, there is quite a bit there. If it were to erode all the way to our property line, well, gee, that'd be huge. It would be massive. So we don't think, I don't think it would occur. I mean, one of the other things that we could do is there's a couple of real cheap fixes. Like a guy could put a couple bales in there and use some wire to kind of cable them in a little bit just to slow the erosion if it starts getting worse and worse. But that's a pretty inexpensive fix. So that'd be something probably we'd do anyways, just so it doesn't do huge. So.
Okay, and I guess it sort of yields to the other thing that we talked about doing as a council is getting in a bus on one day and going and looking at all of these things, because for me, I'd like to see the shop, see where it's eroding, how far away it is. I'm looking at this, and yes, based on this, I also agree with the idea. It makes sense to do it. But I'd also like to see these facilities and have a better feel for it. And that's something that we can look at now that it's getting a little nicer out and would be a little better to do. We're going to take a little road trip and all go out for a little while.
Absolutely.
All right. Councillor Stenhouse.
So would the watershed help out with the erosion on the riverbanks?
It may be something to look into, see if there's different vegetation that we could put there. If that's what you're getting at. Probably
Yeah.
we can touch base with them.
Because they had a project they were doing a few years back, planting trees along the riverbanks to stop the erosion and stuff like that. So maybe we could get the watershed to help us out with prevention of erosion.
Councillor Martins.
So on that line, we just finished our operational planning for 2022-23. There is a resiliency program, and given that we weren't aware of it because it didn't come up we just met this week. It's on my report. Good question. Good question. I'll certainly take it. We have project funding up to $250,000 now. It's all been allocated, but there is that resiliency program, and we'll see if there's some remaining funds. This is a good use as any, right? Mm-hmm. If Councillor Stenhouse is done, I have another input. So the motion on the floor is to go ahead with the investigation. What's the phased approach there, Rod? Because are we looking to take this from 12,000 square feet to 24? Is Bert and the engineering team sort of strawmanned anything with you?
Sorry if I'm understanding your question right. What they would do, when we're providing them estimates, and I've already given them some preliminary ones, we talked to our engineer just to compare apples with apples. So if you replaced a 11,600 square foot shop, what would it be? Because if it was only 400,000, which is not close to that, obviously they wouldn't give us 1.3. So some of that I did indicate to them, I checked with council just to see if there was general support for moving in this direction. And if there is, then the next step would be to indicate to the province, yes, we are. And like basically the business case is already pretty much done. Like it's cost this, and they've already looked at the Google Maps to see how close it is, and et cetera, et cetera. And they were gonna run it up the flagpole to see if there'd be some general support from those up above. But it sounded fairly positive from the perspective of that. It doesn't really make sense to rebuild that bank to the same stage, especially with more and more environmental catastrophes occurring. The chance of something coming and just wiping out that $1.3 million worth of work is higher than it was, say, 50 or 100 years ago. So they have, I guess, a little bit of a side clause or section within their manual that says if it does make sense to actually cure the problem from a longer term perspective, it's something that they would investigate. So I guess the framework appears to be there for support from above. So I think that's a good sign. Does that help?
Anything else? Seeing none?
I was gonna, real quick here, I'll finish it up here. To stabilize the bank is real easy. You just plant willows. They are resilient as hell, and they will stabilize it at the North Country Fair site. That's what they did along the Drip Bell River. They planted the willows there, and it really helped with the erosion. But that's just a stopgap until we can get the new building built. And who knows, maybe they'll even buck up some more money from this to help us, because we're physically solving the problem, like you said, Brian, we're solving this problem for 50 years.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote on this. We had a motion to continue the discussions for using the money for a building. All in favor? It's carried. Moving on to 8.2. Okay, Councillor Dunn.
The council approves the establishment of a joint health professionals attraction and retention committee with Big Lakes County. The council approve a change to section 4A, subsection 3 of the intermunicipal collaboration framework agreement to adjust the doctor's housing subsidy program from 6 months of residential rent to 3 months starting in 2023. That $1,000 be allocated to the Health Professionals Attraction and Retention Committee to come from the doctor's housing program.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this one? Comments? Councillor Tanaka?
I'm just curious regarding another committee that we have on our committee list. And if this is successful, I want it to be a productive committee. Like I want to see some results from it. Like I don't want to say, okay, let's have this committee, they meet, 2-3 times in a year, and nothing really comes out of it. I mean, I think it's a good idea to have, but isn't there the duplication of some of this with the Health and Wellness Committee that meets in the hospital that Councillor Gilroy was on? Do they do the same thing?
I can answer some of those questions. First, to your concern, I totally agree with you. I'd want to see this as a productive committee, and I would see it being made up primarily, if not entirely, of volunteers from the community. So if they would be ones that are interested in this topic and would want to make something happen, not necessarily councillors even being on it. Now, with that said, we'd have to look at what RPAP recommends for committee membership, because when Holly was doing her presentation, she had some ideas of which committees worked and which ones didn't. But in my head, this is sort of driven and run by volunteers, and they come up with the ideas. We give them a little bit of seed money, and they go for it. And hopefully we get the right people in, that they will be a very effective committee. As far as the second part with, what was the second part? Oh, duplication, yeah, thanks. The Health and Wellness Committee, the Community Health and Wellness Center, they deal mostly with issues strictly in the clinic and a little bit in the hospital. They've been expanding. They have another committee, the Community Health Foundation, and that committee has been dealing mostly with, they've been doing some of the attraction and retention. If you go back, that was sort of the committee with George Key and Ken Matthews that were taking people on tours. But really, that's where their role ended. They just took them on a trip. The intent of this committee is to work with these new doctors on an ongoing basis to get the wives and the kids involved in the community, because we know it's not necessarily the doctors. Right. They're happy here. It's the families of the doctors that we want to get involved. So that would be the big difference, and we haven't really been doing it. But we heard from RPAP, and they think it's something that's been useful, and I think we should give it a try.
I mean, I have no problem giving it a try. I mean, the one thing that I liked about this is that it's community driven per se. You have members of the community who sort of take the lead with this, which that gets them involved and lets them kind of spearhead some ideas that, you know, to work together to meet the whatever the terms of reference will be on regarding this committee. But thank you for answering those questions.
Okay. Other questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. Moving on to item 8.3, the tower. Get a motion on this. Oh, Councillor Stenhouse is busy looking for
The motion.
motion.
And, all right. The council direct administration to inform the proponent of the following Industry Canada default public consultation process as outlined in section 4.2 of the client procedure circular, and to work with MMSA to develop a telecommunications policy for the town, subject to council's approval at a later date.
All right. Questions about this project? Councillor Wakel.
I like the idea. I think it's kind of a short tower myself, but it's a short tower. The one they're putting in Foss is, you know, more than twice this height. That's TELUS that's doing that one. Do we really need a policy on this? I mean, how many towers are we building in town? Right? I mean, this is going to be Rogers. TELUS, maybe they're going to put one up, but, you know, when we use MMSA, I can't imagine they work for free. I'm just thinking that, yeah, just follow this. It's not like we're the city of Edmonton or Grand Prairie where there's going to be multiple towers within our jurisdiction. I think this is, you know, there's one, maybe two, and done.
Yeah, I'll let our CAO address that.
So I don't think you're wrong in that assumption. There probably isn't going to be that anymore. I think as we've heard from the doing something, they're not doing it for one municipality, they're doing it for us 10. So there's not a, I don't think there'd be a huge cost there. So I don't think I'd be as concerned about cost. I think one of the municipalities is going to want to have it done. I think one of the things that may assist, because what's interesting in this case is the location that they want to choose is within an area that we have zoned that there's no towers. It's in C3, and our zoning does not include towers. Are there some things that council would like? If another tower comes in, would you like some additional decorative stuff or like things like that? Like you notice in Edmonton and a lot of the bigger centers where they build all these towers, there's a lot more towers than you actually see. There are trees, sometimes they're on church land, they put a cross on. So there might be just some things like that that council may want to say, these are the types of things if a tower comes here that we'd like. I don't think it's a, I think it's not a must, but maybe something that council wants to consider. So I don't know if that was a good answer, but I think from the cost perspective, I don't think it's and if that's something council would like me to check into prior to doing it, ensure that it's not something that's going to consume a significant amount of our allocation. And if you want to put a contingent on that, that's fine as well.
Would you be open to a friendly amendment, Judy?
Well, I want something clarified first, is I thought we paid a flat rate to MMSA and we underutilized their services. So this is part of our flat rate that we pay. Is that not correct?
So that's correct. So there's a couple things that MMSA does. So we have so many kind of hours, right? And they, in every so many years, they're going to redo our land use bylaw. So I don't think we've been charged extra yet. But what it does do, right now we're getting to do a lot more on the development permit side than previously. And it's kind of a trial. And after a few months, they're going to see if they're going to actually have to charge us additional. They do have a little bit of a clock in the background saying, if Hog Prairie is using 3,000 hours and we have budgeted 2,000, they may look at us and say, no, you're not pulling your weight. 1 year isn't an issue because when you do a land use bylaw, they put a lot more hours into it than what you're getting out of it. So they got a little bit of a clock in the background, but I don't think this specifically would make us go over or couldn't be absorbed. I find it hard to believe if this would actually be above and beyond. So
That's why I wanted clarification, because when they did a presentation, we paid for them, but we weren't using them. So why not? Let's use them up. That's what we paid for.
I think, in my opinion, I think the cost would be zero. Like I do. But I think it's a good point. You could ask to make sure that it's still going to be within.
There's no harm in asking.
No.
I think just check on that, and it'd be nice if Rogers would make this look like a big tree. Maybe they could put, I don't know. I was thinking Christmas because I was thinking of the beautification Christmas thing there, but Christmas in July might not go over so well. I don't know, but yeah, just check to see what it'll be. And I don't know. Personally, I don't see a huge demand for. I don't see there needing to be a policy for it, but if we're underutilizing these guys and they're going to do it for basically nothing, then who cares, right?
Councilor Martins?
Is there any issue with putting in the zone that doesn't currently allow for them? Because I'm looking at the maps, 49th and 52nd residential, is there an eyesore problem? Are we considering that right now? This is proposed. Where's the next step? Is it definitive?
So it's interesting in the process. So right now our zoning, where they're thinking of putting it in, we wouldn't allow it. So if somebody came in here that wasn't part of CRTC or this part of group, we'd say no. But they have a higher trump card. So what this means is, because right now we don't have any additional policies. And so even if we quickly pass one, it's kind of post facto, so you can't go back. So they'll take, so let's just say, for example, they're proceeding, they decide they're gonna put it here, we would put in our letter saying that something like it's not conforming to our land use bylaw, and therefore don't support this. Doesn't matter. All the feedback that comes in from people, all that goes into the package, and the people, part of CRTC, they ultimately decide, is this communication tower more important to the region and that exact location more important than the things that we and let's say some other residents put in. So it's important to put the information in, but just because it doesn't conform to land use bylaw, that entity can trump it, which I found really interesting because it just seems, especially in the downtown core, there's a lot of other areas that would be, I'm going to say a tower is intrusive, but they're usually not the most attractive structures, and having something like that, unless it was done up in a way that made it attractive, it seems, I don't know, that doesn't seem like a municipality or jurisdiction has much say. I mean, they'll consider it, but it's not, because it's not zoned for it, that does not mean it won't be there. So I found it pretty alarming.
So some towers go on top of roof lines. Do you know are they planting it in the ground? I mean, because I see I see it, but how long will the residents and businesses here have to put forth their opinion, or what's the?
Well, I know there is a whole process, I could remember these. I do know that the communication tower folks, they have to contact everybody, I think within 2 or 3 tower lengths of that, of the tower, they have to be notified. So I don't know all the specifics as far as days, but they all have to be notified. And we have a property in that circle as well. It's our old water treatment plant. And I know the company was actually in the municipality on last week, Thursday or Friday, they gave me a call and their tower person was in town. They just asked, just so you know, we're in town. So they're just looking at some of the sites, and I know they were looking at ours as well. Did it help? It's a one-sided process, I think.
I have just a couple of comments. Do we have, I know there's towers already everywhere, but the fact that they have to notify within a certain, within 3 tower links, is there more of a health hazard if you're that close to the tower? No, I don't know. I'm just wondering why they picked that area that they've got to notify versus a bigger area. What's the significance of that unless there's a health risk that close?
All I know is that the parameters are put into that federal CRTC antenna systems document. So this document is attached. This is the document that all communications towers across Canada must follow.
Yeah.
Unless they still have to follow this, but if a municipality has additional policies and or procedures, they can also be considered with this.
Okay.
Because they very clearly state radio frequency exposure limits. So clearly, if there's an exposure limit, there's a hazard to exposure. That's the inference I get, right? So, I mean, your face is turning red. I don't know.
I mean, I think many of us have heard that out there, right? Underneath the transmission towers. I mean, but I don't know the science behind it all.
Having spoke with TELUS about this just last fall, they assured me that that's no longer an issue because like I said, the plan is to put one on the TELUS property in Fox, which is right next to Mother's place, and they said no. There's no. Your mother will get excellent cell phone and reception, and cell phone and internet connection. I'm like, matters less to her. And especially now, it matters less to her. So, yeah, they assured me that, you know, I think it's more of, they went with the radius of 3 times the tower's height. That's, I guess, in case it falls or something. And in that case, then it goes to a different body.
That's like big tobacco assuring us that cigarettes are
That's
safe,
right.
right?
They're not?
That's right, yeah. Okay, that was, my other, I guess, comments on this is that, I do like the idea of coming up with a policy for the town, because as we, and maybe we'll get to that 5G network ability, and if we get there, there's gonna be more towers in the town. I can't remember how far apart 5G networks have to be to get that kind of coverage, but it would be more networks even in our little town, or more towers even in our little town. And I do like the idea if we can get them to dress up the tower in some way, shape, or form so it looks a little more aesthetically pleasing, especially if it's in our downtown core as opposed to, you know, off in a more secluded area. So that would be my comments on it. I'd like to see it dressed up.
We do have 5G in town. I'm looking at my phone right now. 5G. Just FYI.
All right.
We have it here. I don't have it at my house,
Yes.
but we have it right here.
Well, to get across the town, it would require more towers, I think. But, yeah. Okay, other questions, comments on this? Seeing none, we have the motion as recommended by administration. All in favor? It is carried. Moving on to item 13.1, CAO's report and action list. Can I get a motion on this one? Councillor Martinez?
I move that council receive CAO Water Resources report and action list for information.
Okay, thank you. And I'll throw it over to our CAO for any updates on his report.
I think the key one is, we're in that season of issuing our RFPs and moving into our capital plan that was tentatively approved. One of the things that, as far as practice, we inform council of where we're at on those. And, so, because we know the province, you know, at least they didn't cut our grants. We kind of estimated, I guess, somewhat correctly in our grant funding. We are proceeding, unless I hear differently, with the lagoon cleaning, lagoon flood damage repairs, because that's basically an in-out entry. So move on that, and the money should come on the back end. The Gordon Buchanan roof repairs, and the purchasing of a Bobcat and a backhoe. The one big change is the Ice Palace pad. So I think many of you have heard Sports Palace pad. They so we know it is in not very good repair. It's beyond its life. We know that the estimate is going to come in substantially more than what was in our budget documents. And I think in our budget documents we had a number of about 400, I believe, was the number, and we're pretty sure that number is going to come in more than double that. And we know the other thing that's occurring this summer is we've got a lot of events. The big one is the national show of the Horseshoe Championship. We could have gotten it out on time. It's been very, 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 very tight. And with the approval process, I mean, any slip up whatsoever would have caused some issues. So one of the things, at least at this point, administration is thinking of continuing to proceed with that RFP, except changing the date. Put out the RFP like soon and saying that we're looking for 2023. That would would give some of our customers that utilize our facilities in the summer a little bit more advanced notice to plan accordingly, because the building will be shut down for basically the entire summer. It's we could accommodate the horseshoe, but it was going to have to work out. Everything would have to work out perfectly because they were going to come in, finish what they could, have the horseshoe tournament, let the concrete cure, let cure for 40 days or something like that before they can put the boards on. So they were just going to just barely make it and put the boards on by the middle of September. So there is a bit of risk associated with this because there are problems with the ice pad, but hopefully this delay will, I guess, provide our users a little bit more advance notice and plan accordingly. I mean, I think there's some ways that, and I think the other big thing is that knowing what the end number is gives us a little bit more time to potentially plan our capital expenditure plan a little bit better. We know we're going to probably need some help from our neighbors on this one. It's a pretty big one. We also have a grant that is out there, and we haven't heard a thing on that. I think council's aware we put grants in for both the Gordon Buchanan roof and the tar and gravel roof as well over the sports palace, and a separate grant application for the ice pads. So, if the grants come through, it'll probably make a lot of decisions a lot easier as well. So that's where we're at.
Questions for Councillor Stenos?
So what will that mean this winter for hockey with the ice pad in the condition it is?
Well, I mean, it's we're hoping that things work out. We know that there's several lines that are broke. The brine lines, there's several of them are broken. There's at least one area that we know if there's one more brine leak or one more line break on the other side of that one area, they probably won't have ice. So there is risks associated with it. Absolutely. There are some fixes you can use. There's kind of a coating that you can put in lines that we're still going to be looking into a little bit, but we know it's not a guarantee. That fix, if you put that into the lines, almost like, I guess you call that, I was thinking of radiators. When you're on the road and you hit a rock and you take this powder and you throw it in, it's almost the same as that. It's a Band-Aid. We're going to do a little bit more research on it, but it's we know that's around 30,000. So but we're going to talk a little bit more to the manufacturers to make sure it's got a fact straight.
Okay. Anything else? I had a couple here. One is I'm just wondering about, you mentioned in your report that you started preliminary work on the Alberta Municipalities Energy Management Program and that grant. What is that about?
So this is the grant that basically the intent is to look at some of your structures to see the energy efficiency factor. And the group comes in, does an analysis on it, and basically tells you that, if you replace the HVAC system, there's a payback of 10 years and you'll save X. So this group comes in, analyzes your buildings, and in theory, what's supposed to happen, along the theory, this is the way the grant structure is set up, they estimate how many dollars you're going to save in utility costs every month. And with those utility savings, it goes to pay the capital costs of those improvements. They guarantee it. So it should not cost us anything.
Gotcha. That's good. I like it. And the second question I had was around the Gordon Buchanan Center and AHS and their use surrounding the gun show. What's happening with that?
I don't have an answer on that.
No, still not.
No.
They're not wanting to play?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
We know what they're going to show right now. I propose that we have a, 5-minute break,
Yeah,
because we can't have a meeting without them.
Yeah.
So, 5-minute break.
we'll take our break.